Welcome to Lesson 62 in Saxon's Algebra 1, 3rd edition. This lesson is going to be about square roots and higher order roots and then evaluating using plus or minus signs. Alright, so definition of a square root. This is located in your book on page 253 in the box. And it says if x is greater than 0, then the square root of x is the unique positive real number such that if we take the square root of x and we square that, we would have square root of x times square root of x, we would equal x. So in that same line of thinking then, we have the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is actually 2. The square root of a times the square root of a is actually a. And you can see, going on down, anytime you have the square root of a number that is not 0 times itself, then it's going to equal that number. Let me show you this a little better example, I think. The square root of 4 times the square root of 4 equals 4. Well, what's the square root of 4? 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So we can simplify it by saying anytime we have a square root and it is squared, the square root of 4 squared is going to equal 4. Okay? Alright, some square roots that you're going to be using a lot, you will end up memorizing those eventually, is a chart here of the perfect squares from 1 to 30. Now sometimes you have something that's not a perfect square. For instance, if I said try to find the use a calculator to determine the 2 square roots of 10 to 6 decimal places. Well, when I use a calculator, you press 10 followed by the square root key, and then you're going to get 3 and then decimal long line of numbers. If you round that to 6 decimal places, you're going to get 3.162278. Well, we know that for every square root, that number can either be positive or negative, because when you square a negative number, it ends up with a positive answer. So you have to list both of those as possible answers. Alright, we also can see example 62.4 in your book says, without using a calculator, determine between what 2 consecutive integers the square root of 10 lies. Well, I can look at my chart here. 10 is between 9 and 16. So then I know that it's going to have to be between 3 and 4. And that's all I need to do. I don't need to use a calculator, and that's all it says, between what 2 consecutive integers. Alright, I also found a chart that has not only square roots, but also cubed roots. For instance, the cubed root of 8 is 2. The cubed root of 27 is 3. You're going to be using these a lot more in the coming lessons, so keep this chart handy. And you know you can always go back and access these lessons anytime on YouTube. So keep these handy until you start to memorize these facts. Alright, so practice problem A says, using a calculator, evaluate the square root of 17, and we know that's not one of the perfect squares, so it's going to be a decimal number. So evaluate the square root of 17 to 4 decimal places. Well, when I put that in to my calculator, I get 4.123105626. If I'm going to go to 4 decimal places, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I look to the next one to the right, it's a 0, so I'm just going to drop everything else, and my answer would be 4.123. Now B says, without using a calculator, determine between what two consecutive integers the square root of 27 lies. Well, I know that the square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 36 is 6. 27 comes between 25 and 36, so I would have to say that it comes between 5 and 6, and those are the two consecutive integers that it comes between. Alright, C says the cubed root. Now cubed means a number times itself 3 times of negative 27. Well, the cubed root of 27 is 3 because 3 times 3 is 9, and then one more time times 3 is 27. So I can say then that it would be negative 3 to give me a negative 27. Alright, D takes it a step further. We're going to work a problem solving square roots. So the square root of 81, you can look at your chart until you memorize it, is 9, and the square root of 144 is 12, and 9 minus 12 is equal to negative 3. Alright, in E, negative 1 squared, and remember this is not in parentheses, so that negative is not protected. We're actually squaring the 1, which would be 1, and the negative stays with it. So negative 1. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. So negative 1 plus 4, and then plus or minus the square root of 9, which is 3. So when you see this plus or minus, that means you're going to have two answers. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 minus 3 is 0. So your two answers are 6 and 0. Alright, hope you have fun with this lesson on square roots, and I hope you will refer to it often until you have memorized those square roots and cubed root numbers. And I'll see you next time for lesson 63.